Hey there! Today I wanted to share how I made this fluorite inspired resin necklace. Links to all of the materials and tools I used will be in the description below. So my inspiration for this project came from this awesome fluorite specimen I have that is my absolute favorite. It really helped to have this to reference throughout this whole process. First, I took a piece of packing tape and folded over one side to create a little handle. This made it easier to get the piece in and out of the UV lamp. Then I took the open frame pendant and pushed it firmly onto the tape and rubbed it around to ensure that it was really stuck onto it. I took some of my UV resin and added a small layer, just enough to fill the bottom. I didn't use a whole lot here, it's just more of a base layer to seal off the open frame. I found that working in small layers with this resin really helps me get a clearer product in the end. So you can see I just used my clay tool and ran it around the outside of the shape to make sure that the resin covered the entire bottom and went right up to the edge all the way around. I took a lighter and ran it over the surface. The heat made any bubbles rise to the top and pop, and then I quick cured this first layer with a UV flashlight for just a few seconds. I did move it over to a UV lamp to finish curing for the 1 to 2 minutes, but I found through experience that the resin sometimes moves around in this transition, so I like to hit it with my flashlight first just to cure that really top layer before transitioning it to the lamp. And then I'm also hands-free for the next 1 to 2 minutes to prep for the next step. So I'm going to use a few techniques to create dimension and texture. The first one is to create an alcohol spray. So I do this by adding some alcohol and this Pearl X pigment powder in lavender to a spray bottle and just swirl it around a bit. The spray is going to create a really neat effect, and it's going to also add some shimmer. Next, I created my base color. My inspiration piece of fluorite has a lot of green in it, so I chose to go with that. So I added some of my UV resin to a plastic cup and mixed some Pearl X pigment powder in spring green. And I really love the just mesmerizing goodness that this color created. I filled up the rest of the frame with the green all the way to the top and used my tool to spread it out. And then next I did a few sprays of the purple alcohol spray, and it's hard to capture in the video, but there's some really awesome spider webbing that's happening here. Next, I added the layers of color to create the stone effect. I used a variety of Jim Holtz alcohol inks to do this, and I chose colors that were similar to the bands in my fluorite piece. And since crystals have geometric shapes, I tried to stick with straight lines and triangles when adding the color. I also really wanted to be intentional with my design, so instead of just adding a drop straight into the pendant, I added a very small amount to the tip of my clay tool so that I had a bit more control of the ink. And I really tried to not think super hard about the color placement and just kept looking back at my stone to find color patterns straight from the source. So first I added a few bands of eggplant purple alcohol ink and I just dragged it straight across the pendant. I then came in with some lettuce green and created a triangle here at the top. used my white snowcap mixative to add some highlights in the middle and at the top. Then I added another layer of the purple alcohol spray. I added a bit of sunshine yellow ink to the top and the bottom. I didn't want to add too much of this because there really wasn't a lot of yellow color in my stone, but I did want there to be some in there. I added the white to a few more places just to add a few more highlights. And then lastly, I used this bottle dark green ink to bring in that darker color that's at the bottom of my inspiration stone. And I added a few bands randomly. Again, trying to just really be fluid with the process and not overthink it. I ran my lighter over the surface and then did a quick cure with my UV flashlight before moving it over to the lamp for about 4 to 5 minutes. Since this was a thicker layer, I wanted to make sure that it was good and cured, so I left it in there for just a little bit longer. Quick coffee break while waiting, and then it's time to move on to the final part of this side. So the colored layer did shrink a bit while under the lamp, which is just what happens to UV resin, and the alcohol spray created all these little divots in it, which actually kind of make it look more like a natural stone to me, so I was really happy with that. Next, I added a layer of clear resin to the top. This resin's self-doming, so it does contain itself pretty well, but I still had to be careful not to add too much resin to the top so that it didn't go over and spill off the sides. So I added just enough to cover the surface and round the top just a bit. I also made sure to drag my tool along the entire outer edge just to make sure that it was covered from edge to edge. And my lighter died on me mid-project, so matches work just fine. I cured that last layer for a few minutes, and then it was time to work on the back. I carefully peeled the piece off the tape and noticed that even though I tried so hard to keep the resin in the frame, a bit of it did sneak out on me. It happens. My theory on this and on bubbles in resin is that it's somewhat inevitable. I do what I can to avoid these mishaps, but I also have found that it's a pretty easy fix. You can see the resin just kind of pops right off once I get my nail under it, so it's really no big deal. Next, I put the pendant on a piece of transparency film. I didn't want to risk putting it on tape and ruining all of that beautiful work that I just did on the other side. So this makes it a little harder to move around, but I made another little tape handle to help get it to and from the UV light, and that made it a little bit easier. So I just used some of that leftover green base from the color on the front. And since this side is all the way up to the top of the frame already, I didn't want to risk adding inks and sprays to this side because I was afraid it would just run over the side. So I stuck with a single color rather than making it look like the stone. I added enough for it to dome up and create a rounded top, and then I cured it. And I did forget to record the last part, but I also added one really extremely thin layer of clear resin to the top of the screen just to enhance the color and then to add one final layer of protection. I added a chain to my final piece, and it's done. I'm super pleased with how it turned out. I love how it looks like it was just kind of cut right out of my specimen here. And you can really see the effects of that purple shimmer spray here in the final product. So this was a super fun project, and I'm hoping that I can do more of these stone resin tutorials. I'm thinking of maybe tackling labradorite next, but if you have any other ideas, let me know. If you like this tutorial, please do all the things. And if you would like to purchase this necklace and see some of our other creations using clay, copper, and resin, head on over to our website at www.sagemoonhollow.com. Thanks for watching.